We're talking to Ross Wilson, who is the record store ambassador for 2020. I'm surprised, Ross. I thought there would have been a crown. I thought there would have been medals.
I do have a crown. I do have a crown. Yeah, it's in storage. That was my King Mondo crown when I worked with the Wiggles.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's right. Yes. Yeah. I remember your time with the Wiggles.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of kids grew up with me as King Mondo. You know, they get shocked when they meet me in person, and I'm this big instead of that big.
Yeah. Well, we're talking today about what you have in that jukebox for Record Store Day, because you know one of the great things about record stores is actually collecting records.
That's right. Well, you've got a whole lot behind you there. I've got a whole lot. Like we've just moved into a new house, so mine are in storage because I don't have enough shelves at the moment. You need lots of shelves. But I do have a jukebox for my singles collection, the singles I've collected over the years, ever since I was about, 45s, ever since I was about 10 years old. In fact, there is one single in here that is the third single I ever bought when I was like 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And I could play it for you if you like.
What's the song?
The song is it's by Huey Piano Smith and the Clowns. I'm very proud of myself because they're like a classic New Orleans R&B band, and that I had the good taste to go, that's a great record, and got my dad when he worked in the city, and got him to, give him my pocket money, and he went off and bought it for me. So it's the hit side was Don't You Just Know It, but the B side is just as good. It's called High Blood Pressure. So I'll press a couple of buttons here and you can see what's happening.
Do you have to put a $1 coin in, Ross? I thought
no, you can if you want to, but I've got it so you don't have to do that.
Oh, really? I thought Tanya would have made it so you did have to do that. That's her shopping money at the end of the week.
No, she doesn't. 10 years old, I bought this and it still sounds good. Wow. That's the actual record.
That's fantastic. And that's a B-side.
Yeah.
That was sort of a trademark. The B-sides sometimes were just as good as the A-sides, weren't they?
Yeah. But that track's got everything that became me. It's got all these backup singers, group singers, and the groove, and it swings like crazy. I like to think I can do that. So this is like a touchstone for me,
Yeah.
And I still play these tracks all the time.
So tell me about 10-year-old Ross Wilson. What did a record store look like when 10-year-old Ross Wilson was going out with his pocket money?
Well, he'd go down to the local, Retrovision or whatever they had, and they'd have televisions in the window. But they also had like a box on the counter with the latest singles or EPs or whatever, not so much albums. Wasn't that kind of store. And I'd go in, ooh, look at this, that. But the big one was like going into the city to like Coles 200 store, which is now a cinema complex, right? But they had a huge record counter, with all the latest singles and albums and all that kind of stuff. And they also had like a cutout bin with a big tray like this, that just throw in all the singles that they couldn't sell. And so that's how I started my R&B collection, because you go in there when I was about like 13 or 14, and you get James Brown, early Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Booker T and the MGs, all that stuff. It was just before they got big, and soul broke out. You can pick all this stuff up for like 25 cents, And I'd B.B. King, Rock Me Baby on locally released. There was so much stuff was released in Australia, but didn't mean that actually sold. So you'd get B.B. King single on Astor. I bought 5 copies, gave them to my mates. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Still got that around somewhere too.
Wow. That particular jukebox, I noticed you're holding a remote control. Now, I don't recall back in the 50s and 60s jukeboxes having remote controls.
Oh, this is a terrific machine, and I'll just work you around this one. It's called a Sound Leisure Rocket, and it's based on a 1956 Rockola. And it's made by this company called Sound Leisure in Leeds. in England, and they're the only company that's making brand new jukeboxes that can play 45s, 7-inch 45 revolutions per minute singles. And I've got like hundreds and hundreds of singles and been collecting them, and I'm still collecting them because you can go to a great site. You go to your local record store, or you can go to online and buy stuff. And I'm still getting great stuff. It's easier than ever because of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a great machine, It's quite expensive, but it works beautifully. And it's got a few modern touches to it in that you can say, I don't feel like listening to my old blues records today. I'll put on some house music from my phone, Spotify playlist or whatever. And you can Bluetooth it through that and crank it up.
It's a very, very modern version of the traditional.
Yeah, I haven't done this, but excuse me. But you can connect stereo speakers to it as well, But most of the stuff on here is blues, R&B, from the 40s and from the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and a lot of it's mono, and was made to be played on jukeboxes. So it sounds fantastic. The first single I've got on it is one of the greatest double-sided singles ever made on the Excello label by Slim Harpo, King Bee. I'm a King Bee, backed with Got Love If You Want It, and it's just a fantastic record. And I still play this all the time. It's like, I'll get it going for you. It's got everything that I like. It's got a surprise beginning. He starts off, well, I'm a king bee. There's no band there. Like, who does that? And then the band comes in and they just groove on this one groove for 2.5 minutes while he's singing this quite salacious song about being a king bee. I mean, what's a king bee? They don't exist. There's only queen bees, but he's a king bee. So let's play that.
Did you use that in your songwriting? Did you use that as an influence, when you notice things like that?
Absolutely.
Did they translate? Yeah.
Yeah, I like, me, I like dirty lyrics. That's Doubleentendres.
Well, I'm a king bee, buzzing around your hive.
I mean, how good is that?
Yeah.
It's like 1957 or something. It would have sounded like it came from Mars.
Buzzing around your hive.
It's really mysterious. You can hear the band playing it. What are they actually playing? It's like, it's just an atmosphere.
Yeah, it's really muddy underneath, isn't it?
Yeah. Like a bee.
There was lots of innuendo, wasn't there, in 50s and 60s, early rock and roll.
I can listen to that all day. And he comes in on the harp. It's like the greatest echo harp ever recorded, in my humble opinion. He goes,
Well,
buzz a while.
buzz a while.
They buzz for a while. Yeah. And sting it.
Great groove, absolutely great groove.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's like your early days. You took a lot of those that great grooves of the 50s and transformed them into those early hits of the 70s.
Yeah. Well, that was my big influence. Yeah. Yeah, especially with Daddy Cool. It's like that was. We were playing lots of old R&B songs. That was our whole existence. Except we, happened to write a few good songs that fitted with that as well. So like,
and Daddy Cool was very, very clever in the double entendre. You got away with some things, you didn't get away with everything.
Little record like that. Anyway, I rest my case. I mean, the record store day, ambassador, for me, I'm going, how did anybody actually think up the idea of making grooves in a surface, and when you put a needle on it and a speaker at the other end, it sounded just like what what they'd somehow recorded, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's voodoo for me. I can't. It's not cool. You could sit me down and explain it to me scientifically, but I still wouldn't understand it, you know.
Well, you know, I sometimes
I
wonder
don't want to
that,
understand it. I don't want to understand. I just like the magic of it, you know.
yeah, is something like the Grand Canyon in the United States a giant groove? Like, you know, if there was some cosmic
Yeah.
record arm that could fit into that, would it play a song?
But you'd hear dinosaurs roaring and stuff, you know.
What's the most recent song that you have on there?
The most recent song, well, that's a good question. I don't have many. It's mostly black music. It's John Lee Hooker and Hal.
You said some of it goes back to the 1980s. What
Yeah,
from the
no, that's okay.
1980s?
So like here we have on. You flip this over now. It's like you got the first lot here, and you flip it to the next lot. So that's mainly old blues stuff on there.
Wow.
And then it goes up to medium kind of blues stuff and some R&B, right? But then
So you've actually curated this playlist.
yeah, kind of. And then in the last few are all instrumentals, and you know, instrumentals is something that doesn't really happen anymore.
Mm.
You know, a short instrumental record, you might get a house record or something like that, but instrumentals, the jukeboxes the instrumentals kind of died. This is my theory, when jukeboxes died out a bit, you know, because they sounded so great on jukebox. But to answer your question, a reasonably, kind of recent one would have been, and this has been sampled by rap groups and stuff over the years, but it's a great funk song. Juicy Fruit by Tume, which Biggie put out as Juicy and rapped all over the top of it, you know.
Wow. Listen to you in your 70s name dropping Biggie.
Well, this is 80s, this one. Yeah. But when I play, I don't put modern records on here because they don't sound that good. The bigger the production, the less good it sounds on the jukebox. It sounds, whereas all the blues records sound fantastic because it's just 4 or 5 guys in a room and it's not all cluttered up, you know, it's very direct. So you can crank it really loud, you know, but I like this bit of funky stuff, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, like in the early days of Daddy Cool, was there a lot of mono recording that was happening back then?
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, when Daddy Cool cut our first album, that was a reasonably big deal that it was stereo, you know, only. They used to put out albums, one in mono and one in stereo. That was really common in the 60s, you know, because a lot of people didn't have like a stereogram.
Mm.
Didn't have a stereo player. Stereo players didn't really come in until the 70s. And I remember going to see Barry White at Festival Hall, and all of the people there were like these well-dressed people from the suburbs, and it wasn't a rock and roll crowd. And I realized, and I was a big Barry White fan, but I realized they all loved Barry White. One because it was romantic, so there was a lot of housewives there. But they could all afford stereos, and Barry White sounded incredible on stereos. You know, stereos were the new thing, and everyone had them out in the suburbs now. And they all came to Festival Hall to see Barry White. It was fantastic.
I still like to pull out the occasional Barry White album. It's good stuff.
I love Barry. Yeah, I love Barry. I haven't put any of him on here. I mainly play him on my playlists and stuff. You know, singing through it from my phone.
Yeah.
But what else is there? I mean, I have songs that people have never even heard of, you know, from all around the world.
Rattle off a few titles of the songs that you have on there so we can get a feel.
This one, Funky Bebop by Vin Z, which was a kind of, I think it's Dutch or Belgium black act. And it's disco funk with a lot of really good, it sounds a bit like Chic and stuff like that. And it's got a vocoder thing. Now, all of that stuff appeals to me. You know, I'll give you a play of that. You know. But it was never heard out here in Australia. You know. Oh, look, it's on already.
So how did you hear about these songs then? If they weren't out in Australia and you're a kid,
That's a good.
you know, we
question,
didn't have the internet. How do you discover music back in the 50s and 60s?
I don't know how I found funky bebop. I can't remember. You get funky bebop. And if you go on, if you look him up on YouTube, is this the bass player, black bass player guy on roller skates? So they're all singing the song, and all the girls are on roller skates, and they're roller skating. It's got funk, it's got bebop. And I'm waiting for the vocoder to come in. Brilliant.
Wow. That must have been a very early example of vocoder then.
The what?
That must have been a very
yeah.
early example of
No,
it.
well, we used to use them in James Black in Mondo Rock. He's got one.
Mhm.
He plugs it into his computer now, but he's got a microphone that goes to the vocoder, you know, and it's good because you don't actually have to sing in tune. You just press the note on your keyboard and it comes out, it makes the voice sound, you know, in the right note. You're making the sound. So there's a bit of that on No Time. You're going, no time, you know, there's that. So we were early exponents of that.
Yeah.
What
Well,
else have we got?
while we have you here and we're going through the records, let's talk a bit about, you know, you've got a new record coming out for Record Store Day, and by new, I mean old, in that it's the Mondo Rock Summer of '81. The incredible thing about that, and I was looking at some of the songs that you were performing then, they would have been pre-release, wouldn't it? There would have been songs that you were playing that people in that audience were hearing for the very first time that night.
That's what struck me when we were putting the project together, because listening to the band is really hot, you know, and we're playing things like Popular View and Mondo Sexo and all these tracks that hadn't even been released. The album was coming out, I don't know, in 2 weeks' time or something, and they'd recorded it for Eon FM and they were going to play it to promote the album and all that. But we're playing these killer versions of these songs, you know, and I think it's a really good album. So, yeah.
When you talk about summer of '81, are you talking 80-81 or 81-82?
81. Yeah, because what had happened is we released State of the Heart in '80, and that was a big hit. And then they let us make another single, so we made Cool World, and that was a big hit. And then say, okay, boys, go in and make an album, you know.
Right.
So that came out in '81. Yeah.
So when you were playing Chemistry and Summer of '81, and even We're No Angels at that show, the audience were hearing those songs for the very first time.
Pretty much, unless they'd come and seen us, you know, we had played them live, unless they were big fans. But most of them would been gone there because it was, you know, down at the P Hotel, Peninsula, advertised on Eon FM. Oh, let's go see it. It's going to be great. They're going to record it and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, so a lot of them would have been brand new. So it's got that, you can feel it. It's like it's got a certain immediacy, you know. And we're quite excited. You can tell we're digging it and having a good time, you know.
Is it today's technology that gives that recording the sound that I'm hearing on the recording now, or would it have sounded different back then?
No, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It was, like I said, it was well recorded by Armstrong's. They had a mobile truck with a 16 track in it, I think it was, and it had Ern Rose and Jim Barton engineering. Jim Barton, both those guys, incredible engineers. Jim Barton was pretty young at the time. He went off, ended up, engineering for like Queen and Rush and all these massive bands. He's back here living now, but you can hear the quality of what they did on that is in the grooves on that. We were really lucky to have them record us that night. I mean, we were playing really great as well, but they captured it all, you know.
There's so many great songs on that Chemistry album. One in particular, one of your songs, Trash. to me sounds like a punk rock song. Were you being influenced by punk rock at that time?
Well, punk rock was a big influence, and to me, it's when punk rock happened, Aussie bands all went, oh, we've got to toughen up a bit, you know, we've got to be a bit louder and a bit more brash. And out of that came the Angels, you know, and Midnight Oil, or even Mondo Rock kind of was, the first Mondo Rock was responding to that as well. You know, we had a couple of guitars and we were like playing hard and all of that. In fact, that song Trash was written with the bass player of the original Mondo Rock, Simon McGillis, who sadly passed away. But he came up with the riff, and I pieced it all together and put words to it, yeah.
You've done some interesting collaborations, because if we go back even further to the very early days of Mondo Rock, there was a song Down to Earth that you wrote with Kim Fowley, who was basically the architect of the Runaways. He was the manager, and he formed the Runaways. And Kim and I went back to Daddy Cool. Oops, there goes my doggy. Hey, shush, out. Studio audience. There you go. It's real, folks. We've got a dog. And I knew of Kim Fowler because I had one of his albums. Whatever fad would come along, he'd make an album. So he had one for the hippie fad, and it was called Love Is Alive and Well. Anyway, I thought it was quite funny. So Daddy Cool arrived for our inaugural visit to the States, trying to get a record deal and playing at the Whiskey Go-Go. And they'd arranged to have cameras there to meet us at the airport. And then we walked down the stairs, because you still had to do that then. And at the bottom of the stairs, there's guys with cameras and that, and a guy in a wheelchair, and that was Kim Fowley. And he comes, wheels up, which one is Daddy Cool? And the guys went, oh, him, you know. And he comes up, he touches me, and he leaps out of the wheelchair and goes, I'm cured, Daddy Cool has healed me. And I'm going to myself, Kim Fowley, wonder what he's doing there. I was the only one who knew who he was. And so anyway, we became quite good friends, you know. And then so a couple of years later, I'm back in the States, and he goes, I've got this great new group, all-girl group, they're teenage girls. I'm going, yeah, that sounds like you, man. And they're called the Runaways, and they're playing I'm going, out in Anaheim or somewhere. And I'm going, that's a long way, you know. He goes, no, we'll come with it. The Tubes are on as well. I'm going, okay, I'm in. So I love the Tubes, you know. So I went along, and the Runaways opened, and then I saw the Tubes, and they were incredible. And the Runaways, I'm going, yeah, not bad. Who's the little girl, you know, the dark one on the guitar? She's got something, you know. That was Joan Jett. So out of that experience, at least I can pick good talent, you know. So that was a great night. And but I was in touch with him over the years. You know, he was quite helpful to me, and sorted me out on a few things, and was always, you know, he came out to Australia one time, and that is when we wrote Down to Earth. He came out to Australia, and he was looking around for talent. He had this theory, which was pretty much proven, I think, that the more extremely away from the centre of, you know, so-called civilization, New York and LA, the more interesting music you would come up with. And he reckons he saw ABBA before they exploded, you know. So he was down, and the place he wanted to go to was Tasmania. And he took this kid from Tasmania and was trying to turn him into a star, you know. I can't remember whether it was like Tommy Trumpet or something like that. And they did a song about high school or something like that. So he was in, and we took him around Melbourne and showed him all these places. And then he ended up back at my place, and we said, we've got to write a song. So we wrote the song in one afternoon, Down to Earth. He takes it back. And a couple of years later, the remnants of Steppenwolf recorded, you know, because he had all sorts of people recording his songs. But I think our version's better. There was also that Elton John connection. That time he came down here, heard, I think it was Eagle Rock.
Yeah.
He went back and he wrote Crocodile Rock, obviously influenced by you guys. But on 2 Elton John album covers, Bernie Taupin is wearing a Daddy Cool badge.
Yeah, Daddy Who, it says Daddy Who. It's our promotional badge that they got hold of. The Daddy Who, Daddy Cool album, in, you know, pink with black writing. And we were off, I think, on our second trip to the States, and we came back. We played in New Zealand on the way home, and the promoter said, I've just been in Australia, and Elton John, who I was touring over there, all he wants to talk about when he goes on the radio is Daddy Cool. He's bought Come Back Again and Eagle Rock, and he just wants to play them all the time. You know, I'm going, oh, that's fantastic. You know, and if you might recall, Elton John at that stage, he was like a grey suited piano man with orchestra and all of that kind of stuff. You know, sat on the roof, kicked off the moss. You know, and then he goes back to England, and suddenly he's flamboyant and he's got his glasses on and he's crocodile rocking and he's having fun. So I like to think we helped him do that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if you saw that Elton John biopic, but in the Elton John biopic at the very first American show at the Troubadour, he's performing Crocodile Rock. And I know for a fact that was years before he even heard Daddy Cool, Eagle Rock, and therefore it never happened.
No, yeah. But anyway, Bernie, I think they both liked us, and you know, they liked the simplicity of the band and the fact we were having fun and all of that. So that translated into their music.
Mm. We're talking to Ross Wilson, and we've had a few phone-in requests or listener questions have come in.
I'm getting
through the record store day. Yes, it's nice and bright out there.
I'm going to have to put the thing over. I've got lots of remotes around here. So,
this is real, folks. This is what it actually looks like in a rock star's house at around sunset.
This corner here, yeah. Yeah, it's got the sun out of my eyes now. That's good.
There we go. So at the Record Store Day Facebook page, there's been a number of questions that have come in, or some on Instagram as well. Actually, one here from Peter Mobbs. We all know Peter Mobbs down at Geelong. Mobsy from the radio. And he was asking about when you're going to write a song, do you actually consciously put that time aside, sit down and write it, or do you just take notes along the time and then collect the notes up into a song at a later time?
Well, a bit of both. I mean, you always putting there scraps of paper with a few lines or a title or something like that. But then comes a time when you actually do sit down and go, where's those titles? Oh, that one looks good. And you just start playing, you know, your guitar or your piano or whatever. So, yeah, a bit of both. Sit down. You got to do the work. You know.
What's an example of a song that may have been put together in note form over time?
Sometimes you have a few scraps of ideas, and I started off with there's a song on my Country and Wilson album called "Time Destroys as Well as Heals," and I've found this. I was looking through old books of old, you know, lyrics and stuff, and I found that I'd been writing one song. And it wasn't all that good, but it had the line "Time Destroys as Well as Heals," and I took that out and I wrote a whole other song, you know, started to evolve out of that. So this is the kind of things that can happen. You still got to do the work. You sit down, you mightn't be happy with the song, but you can go, take that bit out and it'll work over here, you know. So it's a bit of cut and paste involved.
Mm. We had the same question from two different people. Karen Kane and Donna Flynn have asked, do you have a Mondo Rock song and why? Or from Donna, the similar question: if you were a Mondo Rock fan, what would be your favourite song?
If I was a Mondo Rock, well, I am a Mondo Rock fan.
Yeah, Donna, he already is.
Yeah. There's a couple of songs. Some of the songs I wrote for Mondo Rock aren't very well known, but I like them a lot. There's a couple of the more, you know, subversive Ross Wilson songs like Mondo Sexo. There's another one I wrote with
Domination.
A couple of guys in the band. Domination. I love that
theme going there, Ross.
That's really good, Domination. But then of the kind of hit songs that I wrote, I really like Cool World. Yeah, Cool World means a lot to me, and I still love singing it. And of the songs Eric wrote, I love singing Come Said the Boy. So he always goes, Cool World. Eric always goes, Cool World, I wish I'd written that song. And I go, Come Said the Boy, I wish I'd written that song. But in a way, we both helped each other realize the full potential of those songs. So that's good.
Anita Coakley is asking, what was the first album that you wore out listening to?
Ooh, album. So I wore out a lot of singles, but then I didn't really start buying albums till the early 60s. They weren't a big format. They were big format in kind of square music and jazz, which was hip music too, but they weren't a big kind of pop thing until, say, the Beatles or something happened. So, but then I started to buy, not so much, I didn't buy pop albums, I was buying blues albums. And one of the first albums I got was a John Lee Hooker album that just blew my mind because I hadn't really heard him to a great extent. You know, I heard one or two tracks, and then I bought this album, and it's just wild, you know, like this band playing and they're all going all over the place, and he just starts singing whenever he wants to sing, and they have to follow him, and it's like, I'm going, this is fantastic. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want, and just loved what was happening there. So that would have been one. There was also one of the very first albums I bought was a popular kind of folk blues guys. They were white before I totally got onto the black music's where it's at, you know. That was Corner, Ray and Glover. And it was, I think it was on Electra or something like that. And so I got that bit of hammering, but then I got sick of it after a while. I played it recently. It was like, that's not that good, you know. But it got me going, you know.
Yeah. One from Dougie on Instagram. And I guess he's referring to the fact that you've not only fronted bands, but also been the man behind a lot of songs, you know, with credits on Farnham albums, Jimmy Barnes albums, The Angels. If you had a choice, would you rather be the songwriter behind the hit or the singer? Well, you do have a choice, I guess.
The singer, absolutely. I mean, like, well, I mean, the reason I exist for myself is to sing the songs I write. You know, I do sing other people's songs. I've collaborated with Eric McCusker, of course, great collaborator, the songs that he wrote, and I interpreted them together with the other guys from Mondo Rock. But I get more pleasure out of singing the songs I've written because they're actually saying something about me. You know, and for instance, a lot of people, they're still nagging me, including my wife, why don't you write a book? You know, I go, I don't want to write a book. Like, but if you listen to my songs, you'll find out a lot about me. In fact, you can even say things about other people. I don't do it that often, but if you read between the lines on some personal songs, you know, I can say whatever I like and you don't get sued. Whereas if you put a book out, you can't say whatever you want because if you did, you'd get sued. You know, even if you're telling the truth, people go, oh, he's damaged my reputation and he has to pay me $1 million. Well, I don't feel like doing that, you know. And if I can't say that in a book, if I can't actually tell the truth and name names, then what's the point? You know, I could write like a half a book where you get all the good stuff, but there wouldn't be much of the bad stuff in there, you know. And the bad stuff's just as important, you know.
Yeah. Are there stories still to be told, or is the books by Jim Keyes, by Glenn Wheatley, by Michael Chugg, by Brian Cadd, have all the stories of the past been told, or have you got a few dirty little secrets still in there, Ross?
I've got a few, but I've gradually leaked bits and pieces of over the years, but, you know, in interviews and things. But things at the time you're going, oh, I wish that hadn't happened. But you look at them now and you go, that's funny. you can laugh at yourself. It's good.
Let's ask one final question from Leanne Standen. Is there anything on your to-do list that you haven't done yet?
Well, yeah, I'd like to get out of lockdown and go off to Greece again. That's where we're supposed to be at the moment. In Greece and Bali, we were going to have like 6 weeks away from the winter. But no, as far as travel goes, I'd like to go to South America. I've never been there. So that's a long time to-do list, you know. But as far as things like, for instance, my aunt, when she's 89, she's now like 96 or something. Her to-do list was do a parachute jump, right? I'm not going to do that. And she, of course, she had someone with her, you know, but she's been held. And they filmed the whole thing and she put it up on YouTube and it's like, I can't believe this. You know, this is insane. You know, but she enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I think you're pretty much in my 5 kilometre zone, and you can't even come here at the moment.
No, that's right. Can't go anywhere except you cross to the park to walk the dogs.
Yeah. Well, it's been a good catch up, Ross.
Well,
lots
to-do
of
list,
stuff.
like to-do list is in next year in Melbourne, we'll actually go to a record store on Record Store Day. But folks, you can do it if you live in Victoria. You can go to your favourite record store, still operating online, and all the other states, the record stores will be open on Record Store Day. So take it from the ambassador, me. That's where you're going to be on Saturday.
Thank you, Ross Wilson.
Thank you.